Hey guys, it's Judy with Five Sisters Quilt Shop. I'm so sorry I'm 2 blocks behind now. I am going to get going on block number 6 today, and it's pretty straightforward. There's just a few half square triangles and some pieces sewn onto those to make 4 sections that you sew together to make the full block. So it's pretty simple. We're gonna go through it pretty quick, and you're gonna need 5 different fabrics. If you haven't already, print it off and let's get going on it. All right, so I went ahead and got everything cut. Our 5 fabrics are here, and we're gonna need 2 light fabrics, we're gonna need 2 dark fabrics, and then 1 medium fabric. So this is fabric A, fabric B, fabric C, fabric D, and fabric E. And they're gonna all get sewn together to make this pretty little block. Let me move over to the sewing machine and I'll be right back with you. Oh my goodness. I forgot I was working on this. This is the cutest I Spy quilt that I have ever seen. My sister Sherry made one, and it just really gave me the itch to make one. So I'm making it. I may kit them up later, but I'll be sure to keep you updated on it. It's going to be amazing. We're going to use all these fabrics for the I Spy part, and then we have solids for sashing and borders. All right, so I have my dark fabric number 1 and my light fabric number 1, and I drew the line across diagonally, and we're going to put them right sides together and sew on each side of this line. Let's do it. So you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on each side of the line. I'll do them this way, and then I'll turn them around and feed them back through. Oh man, it's never a good time to run out of bobbin, but it happens. I'm gonna see if I have one already wound, which I normally do. And we will just swap it out real quick. This cabinet my husband got me many years ago, and boy, it has held up nicely, and I love this feature where you can just pop your sewing machine up and put it back down in here. A little squeaky, but hey. All right, let's see where we left off. Happens to the best of us, huh? We run out of bobbin thread. All right. One more side to go. Whoops. Get all crazy, Judy. So now I'm just gonna cut them real quick. Cut them in half. Right down that line, cut them diagonally. All right, so then we end up with these 4 half square triangles. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I thought I would show you while I'm trimming these exactly how I do it. This line in the ruler is a 45-degree angle, which should match up with this line on your block. So we just want to put this line on the sewn line of the little block here, and make sure you have 3.5 and 3.5 on these edges, these two edges. So this one's at 3.5 and this one is at 3.5. So I'm going to trim on these two sides here and here, and then I'll just cut off this little dog ear right here, and that's 3.5 by 3.5 inches. Now this one here doesn't really line up on the two edges that I'm not cutting. It's off a little bit, so I guess I sewed it a little crooked. Anyways, so I'm trimming all four. I'm putting it so that 3.5 covers everything, the entire thing, and this is lined up at the seam. And then I can just trim these two edges, turn it around, and line up the 3.5 inch mark. Oops, sorry, you can't see that, can you? Line up this 3.5 inch mark here on this edge and that edge, and make sure that this 45-degree angle is going down the seam, and then you should be at 3.5 inches. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna sew these triangles to the 3.5 inch half square triangle that we just made. And I like to make sure they're all going the same way, so when you put the whole block together, they should all be going in the same direction. Fingers crossed that that happens. So I'm matching them up as I go along. See how the line goes this way? We're going to make sure that they are going the same way. So I'm just chain sewing these on one side at a time, and then I'll flip it around and sew the other side on. But we are going to need to iron these first, so we want them to be nice and flat, so we have a nice and flat seam here to sew the next one on, or actually it's over here. One other quick thing, I like to leave them attached when I chain sew and take it to the ironing board, and then that way you can just flatten those seams all at one time and then flip them over and iron them. Keep them attached until they're all ironed and ready to go, and then you just snip them apart. And they're good to go. All right, so I had set the other four aside in order in which they're going to go on to these. So they're already set up to match the way that the line is going in this fabric. So you see how it's going that way and then going this way, and then the next one is going up and the next one is going across. So that helps keep things straight. What we're going to do now is just add them here and chain sew those, and then I'll be right back. And when you're sewing this last piece on and you come to the end, it's going to be a point here, and then this fabric is going to go that way. So there's a little mark here, like right at that V is where you want to sew your seam. You don't want to get off to the side or off to this side, because then this is not going to be straight along that line of the block piece. All right, so I have them all made here. I just need to cut them apart, and then the next part of the direction says trim these triangles to create a 90-degree triangle. See figure 4. So here is figure 4. So what they're talking about here is you want to make sure it is a 90-degree triangle. And I'm going to go over to the cutting table and see what kind of ruler I have that'll help me as a guide. So I'm actually using my cutting board as a guide rather than a ruler. They're ending up being about 7 inches on each side. And then if you cut here, it's going to be, as long as you have them lined up on these 2 lines, that makes your 90-degree angle, and then just trim it off here. And what I'm having to trim basically are these 2 little things, but it's a good cross check to make sure it's 7, 7, and then a 90-degree angle, and then go ahead and just trim those off. So I have one that is just not quite perfect. It goes across that line a little bit and right here a little bit, but it's at the 7 and it's at the 7. So I'm going to trim it so that this is more of a 90-degree angle without this extra hanging over, and then I'll trim this. All right, so the next thing it says to do is fold fabric D. This is fabric D, these long pieces. It says fold it in half lengthwise to find the center and then crease on the fold. So I did that with this one. We're gonna crease it on the fold. And then you match this crease right here on this little block here, this little triangle point. That's where your crease gets matched. Now these are a little stretchy. I don't know if it's because I cut it on the wrong grain of whatever, but I'm going to use some spray starch on it. Once you get it positioned, then you're going to just sew on across. Now I suggest that you line it up so that, or you sew on the side where you can see where your point is, and then just sew just past that point. And of course that should be a 1/4 inch. So let's see how that works out. All right, so this last piece is what finishes off 1/4 of the block. Now it says, the directions say to cut a 4-inch square and then cut it diagonally twice, so you end up with 4 triangles. Well, this is what I ended up with, and they were just too small once I had sewn it on. You can see I ripped this one off. So what I did was I am using a 4-inch square and I'm cutting it once. So cut yourself 2 4-inch squares, cut them in diagonally 1 time each. You'll have your 4 triangles that you need to complete each section of the block, which is right here. So I've already made a couple of them and they turned out really nice. I'm just gonna have to change that pattern, that part of the pattern, to say 2 squares at 4 inches. And then I'll show you how it goes together. It's actually pretty easy. Let me cut this one and I will show you how you match it up and sew it on. Cut it 1 time, and then you want to take this piece that has the odd little thing here. You know that it's going to get cut here somehow, but we're not going to do that until we sew this triangle on. And the way we're going to make sure that it fits is to fold this piece and crease the center, and then fold this piece. And what I did was I made sure that I folded it right where that point is, which is the middle, and then crease it so you know where the middle is, and then match this one up to it. You can make sure that it matches the fold, and if it matches the fold, then it should also match this, like be in line with this point here. So I'm going to take it over and sew it, and I'll be right back. So this is what it looks like once you've sewn this on. This is probably the most tedious part, I guess. The hardest part of the whole quilt is getting this piece in the right position. And you know, you could cut it just a little bit extra big, like 4 1/4 or 1/8 or something, because it does fit perfectly. The 4-inch square cut in half does fit perfectly, as you can see. And then you're going to trim these up to 6.5 inches. So let me show you what it looks like to trim it. I'm going to have to put this down for a minute and get some good lighting here for you. Okay, so you see here, I have the point of the ruler at the point and I don't know if I'm going to just pick this up. See how it just perfectly matches up along that edge? There's virtually no black really to cut off, maybe just one little bitty sliver. So if you're not comfortable with that, just make it just a tad bigger. Now, the other thing I found, oops, sorry about that. I hit you. The other thing I found is when you sew this last triangle on, make sure, double sure, that you do a scant 1/4 inch, and then it will fit just perfectly. If you've cut it a little larger, then that's fine too. You can just go ahead and do your regular whatever. Sorry, I'm concentrating. You could do your regular, you know, whatever kind of scant 1/4 inch that you normally do. This one I did an extra scant 1/4 just to make it fit on there. All right, so let me just check this one time. Make sure it is 6.5 inches. Yes, it is. That was a little bit challenging, that last little triangle there. But I have one more to go, and then we're going to work on putting it together. All right, so I am ready to put these 4 sections together. And I have them set up so that this design goes this way, all the way through the block. It all faces that way. And I have it so that the seams are going to be nested into each other. They're going opposite directions. So let me just go sew it together and we'll see what it looks like. I'm falling in love with this. All right, so there it is. And I did measure it, and it is exactly 12.5 inches by 12.5 inches. So I suggest you do those scant 1/4 inch seams, maybe just a little more scant than you normally do. All right, well, have fun with it, and we will make that correction to the pattern. Okay,